No.
Good to have you.
Hello.
Hey, Terry, how many people are we expecting?
90 people signed up. I know there are 27 of you on here now.
And you're not even serving wine and appetizers. I went to.
Yeah, I know.
No worries about parking.
Yeah, exactly.
I brought my own.
Good idea. Good idea.
Terry, is this our first official Zoom meeting?
Yep. So we're all excited. We've been planning this for about 2 weeks now, and yay!
Wendy, you were in my French class.
Oh my gosh, that was you. I noticed there was something else from San Diego. What a small world.
Isn't it?
That's great. Let's talk
Roger,
more
good to
offline
see
about
you.
that.
What?
Good to see you, Roger.
See you, Louise. Welcome to my library behind me.
Very nice.
I love
There we are.
Well, welcome everybody.
Hi, Albert. Hi, Albert.
Hey, look at my cool virtual screen. It doesn't work.
You're cool. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? I'm Andrea
Yes.
Neverson. My last name isn't up there, but I'm with Ranch and Coast and a longtime member of the press club. So,
Andrea.
Hi,
Hey,
Andrew.
Andrea.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, Chris.
Welcome, Andrea.
Chris, condolences on your mother.
Thank you. Did you see her obituary?
I did. It was very
Thanks.
sweet.
Hi, Carol.
It's been
Hi,
a tough year
Chris.
for you.
I missed the mom thing.
Yeah, my mom died April 15th.
No way.
Oh,
sorry.
Oh, you're in my prayers.
Sorry,
You're around
Chris.
Thank you. Thank you. She missed her 85th birthday by a week.
Oh,
Well,
Crazy.
15.
oh, there's Teresa.
Hey, Karen Fulbray. Yeah,
Oh my God, everybody on
I
here.
want to introduce my friend Karen Fulbray. Say hi, Karen.
Hi, everyone.
Oh yeah,
Thank you.
I remember you from the Lafayette.
Yes.
Yeah. You guys, this is getting real exciting. They're just like building here. We're up to 41.
Whoa.
Wonderful.
Can you fit 40 people on the screen?
I don't know.
yeah.
Does it scroll down?
Dell. You can.
Shout out to Roger. Roger and I see Terry.
Gallery view. 25 on
Gallery view. Whoops. Dell, can
Wow.
you hear me?
Uh-oh.
I can hear.
Yep.
Oh, no, I was talking to Dell.
Oh. Oh, that's no.
Terry, is there a format here, or Roger, is there a format to follow?
Yeah, I'm gonna wait for another maybe 1 minute, and then Rick's gonna open the meeting, and then we're gonna mute everybody except for Roger and Rick, and then if you have questions, please put them in the chat, and Denise is going to monitor that and make sure that Rick sees the questions. But Roger's going to talk for about 20 minutes first.
Wonderful. The chat might be a little advanced for me, but I'll give it a go.
It's down on the bottom.
Yeah.
Sidebar.
I'm going to need a bigger monitor.
100 people.
It's up to 45 now.
Amazing.
Roger, you're very popular.
I had no idea. There's like 10 times the number of people that come to these nuts and bolts, isn't it, Terry?
Yeah, at least.
So Roger, how's retirement going?
It's not very retiring, I guess you can say.
Well, that's good.
I love your
Anything but
shirt.
retired. What?
I love your shirt.
Oh, thank you. My Star Trek shirt.
Oh, I didn't even notice.
Does everybody like my background? It's the old press club office door.
Nice.
nice.
Love it.
Okay, go ahead. How about Rick? Denise, can you just mute everybody? Or here, I can, I do it.
We can self-mute.
Yeah. Okay, and now go, and then I'm gonna unmute you, Rick, and unmute Roger. Okay.
Great, everyone. Thanks very, very much for coming. This will be the fastest hour in Zoom broadcasting history, hopefully. And it's great to have everybody here. My name is Rick Griffin. I'm on the board of the San Diego Press Club. And it's my honor to be on the board and be the moderator for this event tonight. So in case you're watching, let me introduce our presenter this evening. What this is Write Better, Right Now. It's the latest in a series of 1-hour free writing workshops and webinars with veteran print and broadcast journalists and authors sharing with all of us their writing tips that they've learned throughout their careers. If you need to leave the webinar in the middle of it, it's okay, because we're being recorded and we can go back to the Press Club website where there will be a link that we can watch. You can watch it and pick it up at a later date. So our ground rules are this. Since we have a whole bunch of people, if you'll notice the chat room, the chat group, the Zoom group chat is what it's called. We'll have 15-20 minutes of presentation from Roger first, and then we'll go to questions and answers. And hopefully I will make sure that everybody, their questions are answered and addressed for sure. Let me introduce Roger so we can get started going here. Roger is a retired staff writer for the San Diego Union-Tribune. He retired in March of 2018. And when he retired, he was the Union-Tribune's longest tenured newsroom employee at 44 years. He joined the newspaper as a reporter in March of 1974. In 1974, a long time ago. He covered mostly real estate, development, and design. For 20 years, he wrote a column that you may remember called Smokestacks and Geraniums. His beat throughout his career included historic preservation, politics, and pop culture. And for a while, he was the newspaper's designated reporter on Harry Potter series and stories. He's a third-generation San Diegan. He grew up in Point Loma, and he went to Point Loma High School. And if you know about Point Loma High School, they have a Pointer the Dog mascot, and Roger wore that uniform when he was in high school. His senior year of high school, he was spent as a foreign exchange student in the Netherlands, and then he went to the University of California in San Diego, and he was a member of UCSD's third graduating class. He worked in Washington, D.C. for a while. He worked in Pennsylvania as a reporter, and before he returned to San Diego to work for the Union-Tribune. His knowledge of San Diego history is widely respected. He's authored three books on San Diego's history, including San Diego Perfecting Paradise, Balboa Park, A Millennium History, and San Diego Then and Now. He lives in Scripps Ranch since 1994. He's been married since 1985 to wife Carol Showley, a San Diego architect, and they have two grown children, Charles and Catherine. And so, Roger, why don't you begin by telling us how you're doing during this coronavirus pandemonium, and tell us about how you're doing, and then relay to us some of your writing tips. All of us can become better writers. All of us want to improve on our writing. And so I think that's why a lot of us are here tonight.
Well, thank you very much, Rick, and welcome to Nuts and Bolts Zoom edition. I haven't been to one of these with so many people at one time, and it seems like it's 10 times bigger than the physical nuts and bolts, but I like to see people in person, not on screen, but we'll have to take it as it is at the moment. You asked, what am I doing in coronavirus era? And I'm staying at home and having to wear a mask outside. I thought I turned that off. Oh well, sorry. Somebody's calling. Since the UT, I've joined the board of the Committee 100 in Balboa Park, and I'm now the president. So I'm busy getting that group in shape in Balboa Park, all sorts of activities going on there. So that's taking up a lot of my time. But I'm still helping the UT. I've written 2 pictorial histories of San Diego, and the third one is in the works right now. And I'm writing some freelance stories from time to time when they need me. So I see Peter Rowe is here, so I hope he does the same thing. Right, Pete?
In fact, Roger, Peter Rowe is going to be our next presenter. We haven't picked out a date yet, but Peter Rowe is joining us, and he'll be the featured presenter the next time, sometime in June, and we'll let everybody know about that. Great. Well, I'll be looking to see how that goes. I'm sure it'll be fabulous. Very good, right? Rick said we want to improve our writing, and I guess after so many years in the business, I'm still working at it, and you can never be a perfect writer. And that's probably the most important message I give you, is that no matter how young or old you are, you can always learn something from other writers. So as they always tell you in English classes and others, creative classes, writing classes, to be a better writer, you have to write. So the more you write, the better you get. But you can always be better. So you might ask, well, how did I get into this in the first place? So I went through my writing history, and I'll share some of this because it's kind of funny, but it kind of gives you a sense. I'm sure some of you also went through the same experience. So the first time I ever interviewed anybody was around the age of 8, when my mother sent me to a neighbor's house and said, how do they run a family with 7 children? So I spent a couple of hours talking to my friends there, and came back and reported back to her and said, this is how they do it. Then at the age of 11, I spent the summer on San Diego City buses interviewing riders, doing a little report for the bus company. And then in high school, when I was in the Netherlands for a year, my letters back to my parents were turned into news articles in the Evening Tribune. So there were several of those that showed up in that year, 1965, 66. So if you go back in the clips of the Union Tribune, which I did one time, I discovered they still have all those articles I wrote so many years ago. When I went to UCSD, I got involved in starting the student newspaper called the Triton Times, now called the Guardian, which is where I learned pretty much the basics of journalism, even though we still don't have any journalism programs or professors or anybody at that campus. It's all learn by doing. So that's what we did at the UC University there. But I also worked at the UT as a summer intern and a correspondent for the campus while I was at the UCSD. And I went to Washington, D.C. and worked for, of all things, the Republican National Committee in the year of Watergate. And I hobnobbed with many of the people you've heard of ever since, including some of the people in the Trump orbit these days. Even Karl Rove is a famous person from George W. Bush's days, but we were colleagues there at the time. So everybody who was busy in 1972 has gone on to political stardom or otherwise since then. So that's kind of amazing. But I learned to write propaganda as well as news articles when I was there. As Rick said, I went to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania for a year after leaving DC and got back to San Diego in 1974, just a year after a few months after the paper moved to Mission Valley. So I thought it was rather a nice end of my career to be back in downtown when the newspaper moved back there where it started a couple of years ago. As he said, I had a number of things I did at the paper, starting in suburbs in Chula Vista, Oceanside, covering suburban news, and then worked at the county, then downtown, and ended up in the real estate section or the home section of the Union Tribune and the business section. So I ended up
covering not only real estate, but lots of other business stories for some time. So I guess the common themes of my career are words like opportunity, curiosity, and practice. So I thought, what are the tools that a writer needs to do a good job? Well, if you're a writer, you have to be a lover of words. And to do that well, you have to know what words mean. So I like to look up words in a book called Brewer's Dictionary of Phrase and Fable. So if you want to learn the derivation of a book or a word, this is a really good source. Of course, there are lots of dictionaries and usage books, but one I found once was called A Dictionary of Modern American Usage. So if there's ever a question about grammar or context or whatever, something like that is always a good source. There's a classic in the business called The Elements of Style. I'm sure many of you have seen that in your writing careers. It's only, I don't know, 70 pages, but it has many of the rules that everybody should follow. Another one is called On Writing Well by William Zinsser. There are many, obviously there are many books you can get about how to do a better job. Of course, the classic in any reporter's library is the AP style book. And after leaving the paper and started writing for other things, I discovered that not everybody uses AP. Chicago Book of Style is also something. So if you're writing for on a freelance basis, you should always ask what style do they follow so you can use the right terminology and abbreviations, that sort of thing. Another tool, I guess, is what perspective are you bringing to a story or whatever you're writing. And so that's the point of view. Is it your point of view, or is it the people you're talking to's point of view? I've noticed in recent times that a lot of writers tend to put their own experience into a story, and it really, unless you know who the person is, it's kind of off-putting to have that personal element into a story. So it's better not to use the first person in most cases. You're an observer, you're not a participant in writing most of the time, unless it's something about yourself. That's the point of the story. As Rick said, I like history, San Diego history in particular, and I was a history major at UCSD, so naturally I carry that interest forward ever since. So I like to know the story, the history, the background of anything I'm writing about, and go to the source or go into some book or magazine or internet article about some topic and start from there. So here's an example of a book that I have about the 1935 exposition in Balboa Park. It's actually kind of too bad that San Diego does not have a great deal of historical sources you can go to. It's not like New York or Chicago or other big cities, London, Paris. They have hundreds of books about them. San Diego has a relatively few number, and many of them are not as accurate as they should be. So we in the news business are really the first draft writers of history, and you always go back to previous articles to see what was written beforehand. But as Pete and I would tell you, don't depend on the clips to tell you the truth. We get things wrong every day of the year, and people 100 years ago did as well. So you have to always be careful when you go to the stories in the past, that just because they say 100,000 people showed up at a parade in 1947 doesn't mean there actually were 100,000 people there. So history is good, but it isn't always correct. Another tool or another habit, I think, is to persevere. You want to keep going at it, work as long as you can. Of course, those of us on deadlines don't have the luxury of time to spend a month of writing one article. We have to do something every single day. So you do the best you can with the time you have. And if you don't know the actual truth of something, you can always say, according to, or seems like, or you can couch the story, the phrase in such a way that people realize you don't have exactly the right information because it isn't available yet. That's a common issue with daily journalism. Then I guess, of course, you should be very, very well informed. Everybody on our panel, on our Nuts and Bolts today, ought to be a subscriber to the San Diego Union Tribune, I think. I mean, if you live in San Diego, that should be and you're a communicator or a writer about anything to do with San Diego, you ought to be informed and read the newspaper every single day. If you don't, you won't be as informed as you should be. So please subscribe to the Union Tribune if you don't already. So I have a few do's and don'ts to offer today, and then we can get to some questions and answers. So I picked 5 of each. The first one is research before you write the first sentence. So know what you're talking about before you put pen to pencil or your fingers on the keyboard. Number 2, gather the facts, interviews, and review them all before you start writing. Number 3, write a draft, double check the facts, spelling, math, proper names, addresses, all the details. If you want to be really careful about it, you either circle or highlight all those things in a story and make sure you know them exactly right. If you're an expert on something, you know all this stuff by heart. But if you don't know a topic and it's new to you, it's even more important to be careful that you get everything correct. And as you can see, we still, even with all that experience in the UT and every other newspaper, you always see these corrections about the simplest little facts, like you should have used drive instead of street, or somebody had a spelling that was 2 O's instead of 1, or something really minuscule. So we didn't used to acknowledge all these mistakes. And in this day and age, when there's very few copywriters, copy editors, or even editors, you can't depend on somebody else to circle or highlight something that's incorrect or wrong. So be as careful as possible. Number 4, polish and edit whichever you write. Aim for a catchy lead, a concluding quote, an anecdote, and then write a headline for your story and see whether what you wanted to say in the article or the story is what you actually wrote. Sometimes people write the headline first and then they try to support the headline as they write along, but actually it should be the other way around, because as you start writing a story, sometimes you don't know where you're going to end up. And so it's sometimes better to wait till the end, but it really crystallizes the point of your story in the headline. And it may not be the one that's used, but it gives you a sense of, did I do my job correctly? And the last do is assemble pictures, charts, graphs, maps, links, all those other things that are not writing, but they're part of a story these days. So if you're a successful writer, a journalist, whatever, all those other elements are now part of your job to assemble it all together in a package and either get them yourself or suggest them to someone who's doing that information, that part of the story themselves. They don't have time. Your editor doesn't have time to look for the pictures, assemble the maps. They're too busy. So that's part of your job, is to gather those other things. And then I have 5 don'ts. Don't hesitate to double check the details. Don't doctor the quotes. My only problem with that is that sometimes people get so precise because they tape all the interviews. They include all the verbal gaffes that people have in a quotation or a statement, and it garbles up the story or the quote. So it's actually sometimes better just to quote a key sentence in something, and everything else can be indirect. But the quote should be memorable. It should not be just stating a fact. It should be something that adds depth to a story. But as in writing history books and things, I've always found I'd rather quote a person quoted in the past than an indirect quote. So I always feel like we should let the person speak in his or her own voice, and get it as carefully as possible. You can record every single interview you do, but I found over the years I don't have time to go back and listen to the same hour-long interview and try to transcribe the whole thing. It takes you 3 times as long to do so, and you're better off just taking notes by hand, and that way you'll get the most salient thing that's stuck in your mind that you would write it down. But if you have time to record something and transcribe it, that's fine. There are even some programs out there that do that automatically, but they're not as accurate as you would be if you did it yourself. I don't like to use slang in quotes. So if somebody says, I'm gonna do something, somebody will say G-O-N-N-A. I think that's just the way a person talks, but that's not actually the words. It should be going to or something. I'd rather use the correct words than some made up inventive phrase like that. It always kills me when someone uses grammar incorrectly. Like you say, he says me instead of I, or vice versa, or something like that. And it's grating on my brain when a simple grammatical error is made by someone speaking. So I always have the temptation to correct their grammar, because it just stops you when you read this and you know that's not, they shouldn't say it that way. It should be correct. But I don't know. I try to avoid even quoting them if they have it wrong, because it just is grating on my mind, but that's just me. Let's see. Obviously, don't slant your stories to your political persuasion to color the truth. That's not our job. Our job is to reflect somebody else's position, not to impose yours on theirs. So we are an observer. We're not generally we're not an actor in the news business, unless you're part of the story for some reason. So keep your politics out. Number 4, don't turn in the story without reading it first. You'd be surprised how, even though you've written something and you've gone over it 3 or 4 times, you set it down and you come back to it, you still find little errors. So it's always good, before you file the story with your editor, read it finally. And if you have a significant other in your household, get that person to read it too. You'd be surprised how many times my wife finds things that I didn't notice writing the story. You really are your worst editor. So if you have the chance, let somebody else read it as well. I guess the final thought is things can always be improved. There's no perfect way to do anything. That's the nice part about being a writer. You can put your own personality and style into something. But if Peter Rowe writes it, it's going to be quite different than the way I write it, but they're both going to be perfectly fine and enjoyable to the readers. So that's kind of 44 years and 14 minutes or something. So let's get some questions.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you. Let me just remind everybody, in case somebody joined us, that you're watching a Zoom presentation for the San Diego Press Club. This is Write Better Right Now, a latest series of webinars on how to improve our writing. It's part of our Nuts and Bolts series, and they're being recorded. And you can go back to the Press Club website to watch the entire thing if you happen to have missed something. Roger, let me put into the chat box some of the questions that I've gotten so far. Here's a question from Chris Eklund. What are Roger's favorite books?
My favorite books. Well, let's see. My favorite book, which got me interested in history, I guess I'll say, was The Story of Mankind by Henrik van Loon. I read that when I was like 12, and that got me so revved up about history that it became kind of my interest ever after. Let's see, a biography. I read the Hamilton biography, was fantastic. I've been trying to read the something called Gotham, the history of New York City, but it's like 1,000 pages. It only takes you to 1898. So some of these things, they're all sitting on my bookshelf waiting to be read, but you know, I'll have to be 150 before I make it through all the books I've got at home. And as you said, I was a Harry Potter fan, so I still like that.
Great. Let me repeat some of the questions. I have some of the ones from the earlier that were asked, and we'll get to those for sure. But here are some just really quick questions that you could answer that are also there appearing in the Zoom group chat, and I don't want to miss these. So Do you use the strongest quote despite bad grammar?
Yes, I guess. If it has some slur word in it or something that's provocative. On the other hand, you don't want to slander somebody else. And if they make a statement about somebody that you can't prove or isn't fair, then you should be careful about putting the person saying that in a bad situation. So not everybody has a way of speaking that's memorable. We're not all Winston Churchill. So you can't expect the general public to be as careful about their words as he was. But strong quotes are better than weak ones.
And how about a catchy lead? How do you, any tips on making sure that you write a catchy lead?
Well, let's see. I guess it's always better to be active rather than passive voice. It should be something that will grab the reader's attention. So while you can say the San Diego City Council approved such and such a bill or ordinance yesterday, blah, 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 and you go to sleep. Whereas if you say people will no longer be able to go to shops this week because of the close down of due to the coronavirus, something like that. So it should be something that's visual in your mind and not a perfunctory statement of fact.
Okay. Also one over there in the chat is, since you've been a writer for so long and seen so many shifts in media, what's your advice for a writer struggling during our current situation? Reporters are getting laid off, they're losing their jobs. What do you suggest for anyone not on staff with the publication with a full-time position to set themselves up as well when things start to pick up again?
Well, if you don't have any assignments from anybody, I guess I would, you could find something to write that no one else has covered. There may be some element of this people going to the beach or making do at home. Look around your house, look around your neighborhood and see what is going on elsewhere, and then be connected to your friends and their friends to see what they're up to. And you'd be surprised, everybody has a little story about how they're coping this time. I mean, if I were at the paper today, I would write about this new idea of going to Walmart and they bring you groceries to your car. I mean, it's amazing what a great deal is. My wife says I'm never going to go into Walmart again because I just give them a list and the little grandmothers go out and pick the apples and they come back with this fabulous basket of groceries, and you just stay in your car. It's sort of like a car hop for shopping. So, but there are 1,000 ideas out there for people who are waiting to come back to life. It's, on the other hand, most of us in the paper spend the day on the phone talking to people. We don't actually go out into the public, into going to someplace personally to interview somebody. If you have to interview 10 people for a story, you have to do most of it remotely. Well, that's the same as sitting at home these days. So most of us, or most of the reporters, the UT are now working from home, and their work is just as good as it ever was. So it's not a hindrance to doing good work.
Do you have a favorite profile or feature story that you've written?
Let's see. Well, I can imagine 100 of them I could think of. But I do, one of my most favorite things I ever did was I was covering a shopping center convention in Las Vegas, and our Buckminster Fuller was a speaker, and Ernie Hahn was there from San Diego at the time, planning a Horton Plaza shopping center, and Fuller happened to have been my graduation speaker at my UCSD when I graduated. So I thought to myself, wouldn't it be funny to get our Buckminster Fuller together with Ernie Hahn and see what the conversation goes like. So I called them both up, and they agreed to meet each other, and they had this lovely conversation. So I did a story about these two people coming together. So I thought it was kind of a cool little story. I think we lost Rick here. let's see, while he's waiting to come back online, somebody said, how about writing personal essays? Well, we used to have in the paper, we used to have the Saturday column that people would write about in the current section, and Pete did many of those. And that was a very interesting, fun thing, because you could put away your journalistic hat and talk about yourself or your experiences, funny things, sad things, whatever. So those were personal essays. But it is always difficult to write about yourself if you're a journalist. I mean, that you're trained to put yourself aside and get in the mind of the person you're talking to. So I always felt it was a little bit insincere to be focusing on yourself when you should be going out interviewing other people. And sometimes you sort of get lazy. You turn to the person next to you and they give you a little story, and then you use their quote when you should be work a little harder to find somebody you don't know. It's better to find strangers to talk to than your friends. I mean, it's easier interviewing people you know, but it's more enlightening to find somebody that you don't know. So when I would go to an assignment and there'd be a large crowd of people, I would just simply randomly find somebody in the crowd to interview, and they always had something fun to say. So it's kind of, that's part of the fun of being a journalist, is you can ask any question to anybody. They don't have to answer your question, but you have the right to ask them a question. So that's one of the fun things about journalism.
Thank you. I think I had a momentary power outage on my end over here. Another question that I saw was, what books are you reading right now?
Let's see, I'm reading The Distant Mirror, which is Barbara Tuchman's book about the Black Plague in Europe in the 1300s. I thought, well, that would be the appropriate thing to read about during the coronavirus. And you think we're having it bad. It was really bad in 1359 when half of Europe died. And it gives you a certain perspective on things like that.
And also, when you're on deadline but waiting for an announcement at a meeting, for example, do you ever pre-write part of the article?
Well, I've tried to do that, but they always surprise you at these meetings. So you could kind of pre-write the background. So if it's a story about the Port District decision, you can take old stories and rewrite them as background, but you can't exactly anticipate what they're going to say at the beginning because they may not say what you're planning. So it's better to pay attention to what's going on than otherwise. Although at the city council, people drone on for hours sometimes at some of these things. I covered a Airbnb hearing one time, went on for 8 hours, I think, and Lori Weisberg couldn't cover it, so I covered it. And it just was agonizing to sit there all this time, listening to the same comments from people over and over again. And the real news was at the end, whether the city council voted, and they didn't. So it was a big waste of time to spend all day and not come to any decision. So you could spend all day, and I was spending all day typing away all the quotes everybody was saying with the 80 or so people talking, but in the end, I probably only used 2. So it's important to pay attention, but it's pretty hard to anticipate what the story's going to be until it's done at these meetings.
Do you have a favorite fiction that you have been read that has given you an accurate historical representation for history?
An inaccurate?
Accurate, not inaccurate. Accurate.
Accurate of historical fiction. Well, let's see. I can't think of anything at the moment to suggest because I tend to read real history instead of historical fiction. So
here's a question. Do you have some tips to help people and subjects that you interview to open up, and so you can find that aha moment?
Well, it's interesting you say that. Actually, it's also the end of the interview. So obviously you want to warm somebody up and you talk about anything but the subject. So that would be just, if you don't know the person, you want to know a little bit about them. So obviously you start with the weather and you start with, is this a nice house? And thank you for the Coke or something, just to be pleasantries. But it's kind of fun at the very end when you're all done. You think you're done with the interview and you close your notebook. All of a sudden they will say something as you're walking out the door that actually is the best quote of the day. So after you've warmed them up, they feel comfortable, they might share something that's very nice and insightful about them. So many times I've turned off, if I was taping, I would turn off the tape recorder and close my notebook, and then they say something fabulous. And I'd have to rush to my car and see if I can remember what the thing was, because I wasn't taking notes. So that's important when you're interviewing somebody, to pay attention till you say goodbye and you're gone, because it's surprising how often they say something really important at the very end.
Great.
And it turns out that story, that's the quote at the beginning of the story. So there you are. You can't prejudge how an interview will go.
We have about 15 minutes left or so. Just in case you've tuned in, you're watching a Zoom session with the San Diego Press Club and Roger Showley about write better right now, so that we can all become better writers. And like I said, this is always the fastest 59 minutes in the history of Zoom. How about, here's a question about the TV journalist yelling things at the president at the White House. What are the kinds of things you yell at TV journalists during White House pressers? What to do? Why do they, what should they shout? They should be asking.
Well, I've never been in that situation, so I don't know what to say about that habit. It is kind of annoying. It's sort of like they're trying to get attention. Everybody raises their hand, and they start to get argumentative with the president, and you know how he is. He's just going to put you down, and as he does every day. So but you can be so polite that he won't even pay attention. So I think you should be in control. You shouldn't lose your cool when you're interviewing somebody important like that, and or any other big important figures. There is a certain acting element of being a reporter and putting aside your inhibitions and throwing out some ridiculous question that you would never ask in private, but you've got to get them to answer. So sometimes they'll take the bait and sometimes they won't. So it's a matter of the moment, really.
What aspect of San Diego history has surprised you the most?
Let's see. Well, I guess the thing that I have never understood why San Diego historians and people in general who've written about San Diego, they focus so much on the Mexican and Spanish period that only lasted 50 years, and then the U.S. took over the San Diego County as it is today. So a lot of people spent their time painting the picture of San Diego in the olden days, in the days of the Dons, when you actually read the history, it was a miserable time to be in San Diego. There were only like 500 people who lived in Old Town. They had nothing to do. It was a grimy, flea-bitten, boring place that people made fun of when they came here. And then when you think about it, how much of that really matters today? It's not really, to me, that's not what San Diego was. Why is modern San Diego, how it is today, reflects anything to do with what our origins were. It's important. It set a certain tone for the community that still remains, obviously with climate, geography, and everything. But it was the Alonzo Horton period from 1867 on that made San Diego what it is today. Before that, it was trial and error. All sorts of people tried to make San Diego something that it wasn't. Things failed. So it was sort of a prehistory element of the modern day San Diego. So I'd say the most surprising thing is how many people focus on old San Diego when they don't realize how unrelated it is to what San Diego is today.
Has a deadline ever forced you to turn in an article that you weren't happy about, but you had to submit it anyway?
Well, you never have all the information on deadline. That's the trouble with deadline writing. You go with what you've got, and you're sorry you didn't call somebody, and you call, they don't call back, and then it's too bad because then an hour later they call and you can't change anything. So it's just a part of the business is that you go with what you've got. If you don't have it, you've got to ride around it, as they say. I don't think I've ever turned in something that I didn't like, but I've often turned out something that wasn't as complete as it could have been, but that would be usually because of time pressures. So in retrospect, you can improve everything, but in the pressure of the moment, you gotta do your best.
Here's a couple more questions. You have a great sense of humor. Anybody who knows you, how has that helped you in the tough interviews, especially business interviews?
Well, some people think I'm not at all humorous, so I interview somebody and I'm too serious, and that's not me, but you got to put on your reporter face, you know, be very serious about everything, and you can't joke around. I guess you can lighten things up by talking about yourself. I hate to do that, you know, because it's an easy crutch to say, oh yeah, I did the same thing. I went to such and such a place and wasn't that interesting, but it's not really about you, it's about them. So you have to kind of suppress your personal history and be representing the public or readers to interview somebody else. So you have to be, humor of course is important. It lets everybody feel a little bit less tense, because many people we talk to only are interviewed once in their lives, if ever. Most people never come into contact with a reporter and get quoted in the newspaper. It's a once in a lifetime for most people. So you kind of forget that as a reporter because you do this every day, but we have to kind of give people we talk to the benefit of the doubt and be kind to them and understand their situation, and if they see something ridiculous, you could say, did you really mean to say such and such? Or is that really right? And usually they will say, yeah, well, maybe that's not correct, and you have to kind of help them along. But that's an important thing to be a nice person when you interview somebody, really.
And how much attention do you pay to search optimization in writing, particularly the headline?
None at all.
Okay.
I'm at the tail end of my, I've been in the business a long time, and I never really wanted to be swayed by marketing of the stories. For a while, we were encouraged to do all sorts of social media links to our stories and just go crazy trying to market our stories after we wrote them. And I thought, well, if I spend all my time marketing the story, I'll never write a story, because you could spend all day pushing something, but you have to do something tomorrow. So I sort of gave up trying to be a social media person and not think about that. I figure that's somebody else's responsibility. I know that's not what our editors wanted us to do, but I felt I'm not a marketing person, I'm a news person, and I'll leave the marketing to the marketing experts.
Okay, we have just a couple minutes left. So anybody who wants to put in a question into the group chat, please do that as soon as possible. In the meantime, let me take a break for a station identification. You're listening to and watching a live Zoom broadcast of the San Diego Press Club. This is the Write Better, Right Now, the latest in a series of 1-hour webinars on how we can write better. And our next Zoom webinar is next Thursday, May 28th. Let me tell you a little bit about this free webinar on tips for presenting yourself live online. And the name of this webinar next Thursday, May 28th at 6 p.m., Thursday, May 28th at 6 p.m. is Add Zing to Your Zoom, okay? So topics will include how to improve your presentation skills and online personal polish in our new online and remote environment, and performance tips to help you appear professional and confident on camera in front of a virtual audience. Additional tips will include camera position, lighting and background, and how to adjust your speech and prepare your messages. We have 3 speakers that will include Luis Cruz, who's the Community and Public Relations Director for the San Diego Union Tribune. He is an award-winning journalist with more than 25 years of
I think Rick has frozen again.
Looks like we lost Rick. I have a couple of questions here. Andrea, did you have a question? Did you want me to unmute you so you can ask it? There you go.
Andrea, I don't see Andrea.
She needs to unmute herself.
Well, let me throw out one other thing. It's kind of fun because Rick just mentioned it, how to be a better Zoomer. And Zoom didn't exist when I left the paper, but I wonder if anybody actually has conducted an interview on Zoom yet. The two of you are sitting on the screen and you have, okay. And that would be nice because it's actually better to interview somebody in person. You know, it's better than on the phone. So to imagine being able to do Zoom for a regular interview with somebody and you can watch them and they can see you and it's a nice conversation. It's much more personable than on the phone. So I'm wondering whether any reporters now are using Zoom as an interview vehicle. That would be really a fun thing to do these days. I think that's a new opportunity that didn't exist.
I'm unmuting. This is Bridget Naso with NBC7. Can you hear me?
I get you, yes.
Yes. Well, Gidget is my family name. This is my family Zoom computer. But now everyone I interview knows me as that. Hi, Andrea. Hi. So, yes, this has been a fabulous resource to use to interview people. And you can interview people that it's very difficult with their schedules in television to coordinate, or there's lots of security to get through, or maybe they're somewhere else in the country. So this has been just incredible to, I think, get better interviews with more informed people and just get it done real quick for TV, because TV, half the hassle is getting there and getting back. That's a lot of time wasting. So for me, Zoom has been fantastic.
Yeah.
I will mute. Yeah.
Yeah, that's and TV's done a great job using Zoom, and it's kind of funny how they set it up. And we all look at the books on their tables, or whether the cat is in the corner, and their pictures on the walls. And I see some people have their virtual backgrounds behind them, but actually it's more fun just to see you're sitting where you're sitting, unless you're in the Supreme Court and somebody's flushing the toilet while you're giving it. That was the biggest faux pas of the year, if you ask me. We still don't know who did that, but you hate, as a reporter, you hate to let people into your own life because you don't want to be the subject. Yet it is kind of nice to see media people in their home environment interviewing you. It just personalizes everybody. And I haven't seen anybody really souping up their environment yet, but you can be sure if this becomes a standard thing that you're going to have your own little Zoom space in your house. Zoom set, exactly. And that's, for now, it's kind of fun to see people to be real people, I guess.
Andrea, go ahead and ask your question, please.
You hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, good. And I'm sorry if this question was already asked earlier, but I'm just wondering what Roger believes is the future of print journalism. Endangered species?
I hope not, because like many of us, I like the daily newspaper on the driveway and picking up and thumbing through it every day, not to mention magazines and books and all the other print media out there, magazines in particular. I wouldn't be surprised though, in the next decade or something, where it'll be a premium to buy the printed newspaper. You have to pay a lot more per day to get the printed copy delivered to you. I mean, this is like a personal service you're getting for $1.50 or whatever it is per day. It's the best bargain there is. But given the economics of the business, I'll bet that you will have to pay a lot to get the paper delivered to you, and more likely you'll just print it out at home and read it that way. So a lot of people have proclaimed the death of newspapers many times for the last 50 years, and I hope it doesn't happen. But there are other means to deliver it, like on an iPad or a phone or whatever. We just have to learn to make it a pleasurable experience. That's the thing. The nice thing about a newspaper, and nothing exists like it, is that you find stuff you weren't looking for. The trouble with most media today is you're looking for something and you find it. You don't read something that you weren't looking for. You just know that isn't part of your search. The search engine is an serendipity kind of vehicle. So the nice thing about newspaper is you turn the page and you see something you weren't interested in, but the headline grabs you in the picture or something, and you become familiar with something that you weren't looking for. So it's a marvelous invention, and we would lose a lot if we don't have a newspaper in everybody's home.
Roger, just a couple minutes left, and just a couple last questions. Is there someone you'd like to have interviewed in your career that perhaps didn't get a chance to?
Let's see. Well, there was a story I wanted to do. It's not a person, but it's a topic that I always wanted to write about land lawyers, I call them, because they have these lawyers that appear at city council meetings and so on. And I always thought, why do they do that? And I always thought I'd get a group of them together and find out the secrets about why things are done the way they are in San Diego's real estate market, basically, or their development. So there are many people I never got to interview, but that's one story I never got a chance to write. And I don't know why, but it never happened. But I must say one of the most fun stories I ever did was I got to climb the crane of a high-rise downtown and spend a couple of hours with the crane operator, like 300 feet above in the air. And that was lots of fun. So that's the fun thing about newspapers or journalists. You get to do things that the average person doesn't, and you get to share that experience with them. So that's kind of the coolest part about a reporter's life.
And what has changed since your career started, and what has stayed the same?
Well, let's see. What's changed is manual typewriters were the beginning. When I was a cub reporter or when I was a summer reporter, they typed away on these noisy typewriters at the UT building downtown. And what's never changed, I guess, is just the search for the story. I mean, it's a common thing. It's the same today as it was ever in the past, that you're always looking for the news. The news is about something new. And some people in politics don't understand what our job is. It's not to tell you what you already know and say, aren't you a nice president? You know, it's just to say, what are you doing wrong? That's our job, is to tell people what they don't know and point out the things that are going wrong. That's kind of our two big jobs, I think.
And have your kids followed your career path with your writing skills by any chance?
I have a daughter and a son. Both are very good writers, but one is a civil engineer and the other one is a data scientist. So,
okay.
But they're very good communicators. Actually, I don't think they got that from me, but they really are very good in pressing their points argumentatively and with their bosses. They're not shrinking violets by any sense, by any means. So maybe that rubbed off on them too.
Okay, well, look, everybody, we have 1 minute left. Thank you very much for joining us. Couple of reminders. Next Thursday, we have add Zing to your Zoom. Look at the Press Club website of sdpressclub.org. sdpressclub.org. If you're not a member of the Press Club, what are you waiting for? You know, join us, please. We have one of the best press clubs in the nation, we think. And we have our awards program this fall. You won't want to miss that, to be sure. Then join us sometime in June for Peter Rowe and his writing tips. Terry, why don't you unmute everybody, and we'll just say hi to bye to everyone, so that we can all talk together, and it will be a wonderful symphony of noise.
Don't see how, sorry.
There we go.
Bye, everyone. Think we have to do it ourselves.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for being here.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you.
Farewell
Wash your hands.
of eaters and
I know.
Night, Carol.
Thank you, Roger.
Night, Carol.
Thank you, Roger. You can get beamed
Thanks,
up now.
Roger. You're lovely.
Beam me up.
Beamed up, Scotty.
Great.
Okay. Okay.
Thank
See
you,
you later.
Roger. Thank you,
Thanks,
Rick.
Rick.
Thank you. Thanks, Terry.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Awesome.
Good job, Rick.
Great.
Good job.
Next time hors d'oeuvres.
See you later, Calabar.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, April. Long time no see.
Hi.
Hello, Excalibur.
This is making me miss everybody so much.
Aww.
No
We missed you
crying.
too.
No crying.
No crying on Zoom. Yeah. We all
Crying.
getting long hair
That should be
though.
the name of the next one. No crying on Zoom.
No, but this turned out really, really well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent
Yeah.
job, everybody.
It turned out great.
Very professional. And no porno.
Well, thank you.
For the next
And-
Thank you, everybody.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
I'm gonna.
all right, go ahead, Terry. Good night.
I'm gonna go ahead and end the session. Thanks everybody for being here. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Good
night.
you.
We need Reno next time.